Et Paris, c'est moi. Du fond de l'obscurité, une voix m'appelait. Deux petites lueurs d'un bleu étincelant luisaient tout là-bas. J'ai aussitôt reconnu les yeux de Chilson. Mon chien était déjà revenu dans mes rêves, mais c'était la première fois qu'il m'interpellait aussi directement. Une traînée de lueur blanche pareille à un rayon de lune glissait jusqu'à mes pieds, trouant l'obscurité absolue. Au milieu de ce chemin lumineux, mon chien d'un blanc immaculé m'attendait en remuant la queue. « Arrête-toi, ne t'en vas pas. Viens, quelqu'un t'attend. » 역사와 사회에 아주 밀접하게 관계를 계속하고 있는 문학이라고 말씀드리고 싶어요. 사실 서구의 문학이 19세기 사실주의 때 사회와 역사에 대해서 굉장히 관심이 많았지만 그 이후로는 훨씬 더 개인적인 문학이 되어가고 있다면 한국 문학은 아무리 개인적인 작품이라 하더라도 한국 작가들의 작품을 읽어보면 굉장히 사회와 역사라고 하는 것에서 무관하지 않다라는 생각을 합니다. 시대와 불화해서 그 시대의 어려움을 겪고 있는 사람이나 정치적으로 배척된 사람들의 입장에서 그것을 대변하는 역할을 한다든가 한국 문학은 굉장히 사명감을 가지고 작가들께서 글을 써오신 것 같아요. 그런 점들이 저는 참 좋습니다. 겨울방학 때쯤에 김숨 작가의 듣기 시간이라고 하는 작품을 해보고 싶어요. 위안부에 관련된 글인데요. 제가 번역의 경험이 조금 쌓이면서 사실 언어적으로 이걸 어떻게 잘 번역을 해볼까라고 하는 고민보다 무엇을 번역해볼까라고 하는 생각이 더 많이 드는 것 같습니다. 전달해야 되는 작품이 단순히 상업적으로 인기가 있고 많이 팔릴 작품이 아니라 인류 사회에 꼭 그래도 읽어야 될 작품이라고 생각되는 것들, 그리고 한국 사회에서 약자라든가 세월호의 희생자라든가 아니면 그런 위안부의 문제 그 외에 또 우리 사회가 강압적으로 막 그 지배적인 이데올로기 누구나 다 성공해야 되고 잘 돼야 되고 그런 이데올로기 때문에 희생당한 이야기들이 굉장히 많은데 작품들이 좋은 작품들이 굉장히 많거든요. 그래서 앞으로 계속 그런 작품들을 더 번역해보고 싶습니다.
(2025) celebrates the 80th anniversary of liberation. A place filled with culture, history, and diverse experiences. This is the Independence Hall of Korea. Upholding the values of the independence movement, and together with the whole nation, we will make Korea great. The Independence Hall of Korea.
In our headlines on this Friday, July 18th, here in South Korea, Torrential rain continues to wreak havoc across the country as flash floods and fears of landslides force thousands to evacuate, schools to close, and travel to halt. Also, on this Friday, lawmakers across the aisle approved the president's nominations for the posts of Economy, Foreign and Trade Minister to jumpstart national policy initiatives. Meanwhile, the US Senate Armed Services Committee passes a defense spending bill for next year that prevents the Defense Department from withdrawing American soldiers stationed here in South Korea without congressional approval. We start here on the national front as flash floods have led to losses of lives, emergency evacuations and property damage. Kim Jung-sil has our top story.
Severe flooding continues across South Korea with heavy rain that began Wednesday, causing widespread damage and evacuations. As of 11 a.m. Friday, 4 people have died, 3 in Chungcheongnam-do and 1 in Gyeonggi-do provinces, while 2 others remain missing in Gwangju, according to the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters. Over 5,600 people have been evacuated, with more than 3,500 still unable to return home. Roads, bridges, and embankments have collapsed, with nearly 500 public facilities and over 400 private buildings damaged. Nearly 250 schools nationwide have been impacted by the rain, with some closed, others shifting to online classes, and many implementing shorter hours. In Dangjin, Chungcheongnam-do province, the flooding has been particularly devastating. The rain has submerged neighborhoods, blocked roads, and caused widespread damage. Floodwaters have made it difficult for drivers as the wheels of vehicles are nearly submerged, making it dangerous to navigate flooded roads. Fallen trees are also obstructing highways, with emergency crews working to clear debris.
Heavy rain will continue through tomorrow, with up to 50 millimeters per hour expected tonight and tomorrow morning. Some areas could see up to 200 millimeters, with southern regions possibly experiencing up to 300 millimeters.
Woo also urged foreigners in South Korea to stay informed about the weather and follow evacuation instructions sent through emergency text alerts. As the rain continues, authorities are on high alert, bracing for further damage, with more rainfall expected through the weekend. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
And in light of that weather forecast, President Lee Jae-myung cancelled a scheduled town hall and convened instead an emergency response meeting. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
Disasters may be inevitable, but their damage, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says, can be reduced with thorough preparation. That was the key message from the president on Friday as he convened an emergency meeting in response to the heavy rains.
국가의 제1의 책무는 국민의 생명과 안전을 지키는 일입니다. 좀 과하다 싶을 정도로 피해 예방과 사고 예방을 위해서 필요한 자원들을 충분히 배치해야 되겠습니다.
With downpours battering the country for days and already claiming several lives, President Lee postponed a scheduled town hall in the southeastern city of Busan and instead visited the National Disaster and Safety Status Control Center in Seoul. Emphasizing preemptive action, he instructed the Korea Meteorological Administration to issue timely alerts tailored to each region.
취약 지역인 또 취약 국민들인 반지하 또는 독거 주민들 그리고 범람이나 산사태 또 붕괴 함몰 우려가 있는 지역들에 대해서 철저하게 사전 대비를 해야 되겠습니다.
The president also urged local governments to stay in full emergency mode and carry out post-disaster support and recovery efforts without delay. He then received updates on damage assessments and response measures from the Ministry of the Interior and Safety and local authorities.
President Lee spoke to the mayor of Ulsan in detail about why the road wasn't fully closed off, despite prior warnings from residents before the retaining wall collapsed.
The collapse on Wednesday killed a man trapped in his vehicle. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
Also, on this Friday, the Parliament has approved the President's nominations for the posts of Economy, Foreign and Trade Minister. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the latest on the confirmation hearings.
South Korea's National Assembly has approved confirmation hearing reports for 3 high-profile ministerial nominees, including the government's top economic and foreign policy positions. On Friday, lawmakers adopted reports for Koo Yoon-chol, chosen to serve as Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Economy and Finance, Cho Yeon, nominated for Foreign Minister, and Kim Jong-kwan, the pick for Trade Minister. The opposition People Power Party, which had initially vowed to withhold approval for the cabinet's nominees, ultimately agreed to move forward with those seen as essential to national policy.
With less than 2 weeks left before the U.S. begins imposing reciprocal tariffs, this is an urgent situation. We'll do our part to make sure the confirmation reports for the finance, foreign, and trade ministers are adopted quickly so they can get to work on the tariff negotiations right away.
The new administration needs to complete its cabinet as soon as possible and focus fully on running the country. That's the only way we can not only help people recover from economic hardships, but also respond swiftly and effectively to disasters like the recent heavy rains.
But not all nominees have been given the green light. Confirmation hearings continued on Friday for the administration's final batch of nominees for the week. Among them were Chung Eun-kyung, the nominee for Minister of Health and Welfare, and Yoon Ho-jung, up for Interior and Safety Minister. Chung, the former head of the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, acknowledged challenges such as South Korea's aging population and outlined plans to push forward expanding healthcare benefits for children and the elderly.
The ministry must double down on its core mission, strengthening the social security system and improving public health to ensure a basic standard of living for all citizens.
Yoon, a 5-term sitting lawmaker, pledged to prioritize AI innovation and balance national development led by districts outside the capital region. Meanwhile, 2 more nominees for Land Minister and Culture Minister are still awaiting their confirmation hearings. The PPP also continues to hold firm against 2 other controversial picks, Lee Jin-suk for Education Minister and Kang Son-woo for Gender Equality Minister, citing allegations of academic misconduct and abuse of authority, respectively. As President Lee looks to finalize his first cabinet, the outcome of these final hearings and the political tensions around them could help shape the early direction of his administration. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the South Korean economy remains vulnerable to persistent challenges, including sluggish spending and construction investment, but consumer sentiment appears to be improving. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young covers the economic assessment for July by the Finance Ministry.
South Korea's economy continues to face downward pressure due to a delayed recovery in domestic demand and ongoing trade risks. But some positive signs, such as improving consumer sentiment, are emerging. That's according to the latest Economic Green Book, a monthly economic assessment report released by the Finance Ministry on Friday. This also marks the 7th consecutive month that the government stated that the economy faces downside pressure. However, the ministry slightly toned down its assessment by omitting the term increasing in reference to downside risks.
Recent downward pressure on the Korean economy is largely due to the slow recovery of domestic demand, particularly in consumption and construction investment, coupled with persistent employment difficulties in vulnerable sectors and worsening external conditions stemming from U.S. tariff impositions. However, we're also starting to see some positive signs, like an improvement in consumer sentiment.
He added that while downward factors previously dominated, both upward and downward factors are now coexisting.
It seems the recent significant rise in stock prices and expectations for supplementary budget projects are positively influencing consumer sentiment. There's potential for these factors to continue to positively affect consumption in the future.
Despite these positive signals, trade risks in exports remain a significant concern as the August 1st deadline for tariff negotiations approaches. The ministry analyzed that exports in June rose by 4.3% compared to the same month last year, largely attributed to improved semiconductor market conditions and pull-forward demand before the end of the pause on U.S. reciprocal tariffs. To boost economic and livelihood recovery, the ministry has pledged to swiftly execute a supplementary budget worth 31.8 trillion won, or around 23 billion US dollars. It also reaffirmed its efforts to ensure that the livelihood recovery consumption coupons, scheduled for distribution from July 21st, become a catalyst for revitalizing domestic demand, including consumption and local economies. To address trade risks, the government said it is committed to providing comprehensive support for Korean companies affected by U.S. tariff impositions. 문지영, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea says no contamination has been detected in the West Sea from North Korea's Ulsan uranium plant wastewater. A two-week probe by agencies here, including the Nuclear Safety Commission, found no contamination at 10 sites along the West Sea and nearby rivers. Uranium, cesium and heavy metals remained consistent with past levels, and radioactive cesium was not detected. The government nonetheless will continue its monitoring at several key locations amid satellite analysis suggesting wastewater flow from North Korea into the West Sea. A U.S. defense spending bill for next year, recently passed by the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee, prevents the Pentagon from withdrawing American soldiers stationed here in South Korea in the absence of congressional approval. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
For the first time in 5 years, the National Defense Authorization Act for the 2026 fiscal year includes a ban on using funds to reduce the number of U.S. Forces Korea troops below the current level of 28,500. The U.S. Defense Policy Bill was posted on the Congress's website on Thursday, where it affirmed the reinforcement of the ROK-U.S. alliance by maintaining the current USFK troop level. The bill reads, amounts authorized to be appropriated by this act may not be obligated or expended to reduce the total number of members of the armed forces permanently stationed in or deployed to the Republic of Korea below 28,500, or to complete the transition of wartime operational control of the United States Republic of Korea Combined Forces Command from the United States-led command to Republic of Korea-led command. However, the NDAA leaves open the possibility of using defense funds for a USFK reduction or OPCON transition if it is in the national security interest of the United States, adding that the action could only be undertaken after proper consultations with its allies, including South Korea, Japan, and other countries that have sent military contributions to the UN command. The ban was previously included in the NDAA from the 2019 to 2021 fiscal years to prevent any potential unilateral reduction during the first Trump administration. However, it was removed from the bill during the former President Joe Biden's term in office. It's the first time that the Senate added a ban on the use of funds for the completion of wartime OPCON transfer. The latest bill comes amid speculation that the Trump administration could reduce the number of USFK and ask Seoul to increase spending for its own defense. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Prehistoric rock carvings in the southeastern Korean city of Ulsan recently secured UNESCO World Heritage recognition. Our Choi Seong covers the implications of this latest acknowledgement.
Petroglyphs along the Pangucheon stream in Ulsan became South Korea's 17th entry on the UNESCO World Heritage List. These are carvings made on rock walls beside the stream by prehistoric people who lived on the Korean peninsula about 6,000 years ago. This is South Korea's first UNESCO World Heritage listing on petroglyphs that show prehistoric life and possible beliefs.
This inscription is especially meaningful as it marks the first petroglyph site in all of Asia to be recognized by UNESCO. Until now, only 7 countries, including Russia, Algeria, and Brazil, had petroglyphs on the World Heritage List. South Korea is the first in East Asia to achieve this.
On July 12th in Paris, the World Heritage Committee recognized the Pangucheon petroglyphs as masterpieces of human creativity, showcasing the artistic and unique skills of ancient people living along coastal areas of the Korean peninsula. Especially the committee said those featuring whales and whaling were a historically important record of outstanding universal value.
Whale inscriptions are extremely rare worldwide. These petroglyphs uniquely show not only different whale species, but also detailed hunting methods. With little written record from prehistoric times, the Pangucheon petroglyphs provide invaluable insight into the lives and creativity of early humans.
Following its addition to the UNESCO tentative list in 2010, the full listing has finally come to fruition after 15 years. Notably, it is the second prehistoric heritage site in Korea to gain World Heritage status after the dolmen in Ganghwa in the country's western region. Due to its location near a stream and risk of flooding, the World Heritage Committee recommended reporting progress on flood prevention measures and formally involving local communities in site management. The Korea Heritage Service also made special efforts to ensure their preservation, contributing to the successful listing.
To be listed as a World Heritage Site, its value must be clearly identified and well preserved through strong management plans. All efforts need to meet UNESCO standards. We prepared thoroughly in these areas, which led to its successful listing.
South Korea has 13 sites on the UNESCO tentative list, including the second phase of tidal flats, Seoul's old city walls, and Busan's wartime heritage are under review. Cho Seong, Arirang News.
And on the entertainment front, Netflix's animation Kpop Demon Hunters continues to make headlines with its original storytelling and intriguing blend of Korean culture. Our An Sung-jin files this report.
A demon boy band?
K-pop, an animation combining to create a global sensation. The Netflix movie Kpop Demon Hunters, which tells the story of a K-pop girl group and their secret identities as demon hunters, topped charts in 41 countries within the first week of its release on June 20. Its original soundtrack album also dominated global music charts, ranking second on the Billboard 200 and 8 individual tracks topping a variety of other charts. But it's not only the visuals and music. The movie is made even more special by incorporating Korean tradition and culture, even embedding aspects of shamanism.
Netflix has a lot of reach all over the world, so whoever did not know about the Korean culture before it was introduced in some way or another.
Also, just like the K-pop part, you know, it was a good way to combine something that's so mainstream these days and Korean culture. I think it was also a good way to educate people about Korean culture.
And this explosive craze for the animated film has resulted in a sales boost for products, which bear a resemblance to characters and items that appear on screen. In fact, at the gift store at the National Museum of Korea, items including tiger and magpie badges and a pen featuring a gat, or traditional Korean hat, saw a huge uptick in sales.
This seems to be an opportunity to share Korean traditional culture with global consumers through content. Hallyu at the moment is trending with a lot of interest, so we hope to further work on disseminating our culture through these products.
The presence of such traditional icons play a true role in disseminating Korean culture beyond K-pop.
Not only is it very well made, but it's the Korean elements that become interesting and refreshing for Western viewers. With their popularity, these films serve as culture ambassadors, often more effective than government campaigns.
By blending Korean heritage with intriguing storytelling and catchy rhythms, Kpop Demon Hunters has turned into a trendsetter for global fans, fueling further interest in Korea's cultural icons. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Also on Netflix, Korean content reportedly pushed up profits for the streaming service during the second quarter. According to Netflix officials, original animation Kpop Demon Hunters and drama series Squid Game Season 3 were among the screen productions that led to better than expected earnings. In fact, revenue rose almost 16% in the second quarter on year, amounting to over $11 billion. And on the K-pop front, a new boy band is gaining quite a bit of attention here in South Korea as some of its members hail from North Korea. My colleague Park Gun-woo met up with them.
Alone, they're just individuals with different verses. But together, they create a story, a song, and a universe. That's how you could describe this brand new 5-piece K-pop group, Universe, which has 2 members who are North Korean defectors. It's extremely rare to see North Korean-born idol stars debut on the K-pop scene, which makes you wonder how they first got into K-pop.
I came across FX's La Chata music video when I was young and heard K-pop songs through USBs passed around secretly.
Coming to South Korea at a young age was already a dangerous journey, but their struggle didn't end there.
My beloved family were still in the north, and while coming here allowed me to finally dream, I still felt like the loneliest of the lonely. The biggest battle was with myself, a fight I kept losing, but just having our members by my side filled that emptiness and gave me strength.
Even language was a hurdle, especially for rap.
I naturally speak in a North Korean dialect, but when I rap, I train myself to turn it off. As for English, I started with the ABCs and kept practicing until it finally started to feel natural.
Other members, Asian Americans Kenny and Nathan, and Japanese Aito also faced their own challenges.
Hardest part about training was the cultural barrier, right? So there's a lot of getting used to that, and also sentence structure. So I had to learn how to shape my mind into a Korean person.
Well, I've never been away from family for the past 23 years of my life. There's a lot of adjustment to do. However, with the guys now and the staff and everyone, they're like my second family. So.
Despite their different backgrounds, they found common ground in pursuing their dreams through music.
With diversity being a factor in our group, we learned that, hey, everyone's story is important. Everyone matters, and everyone deserves to be heard and deserves to be respected, despite wherever they come from.
They hope to be of comfort to others, and that very hope is what's guiding them toward their own dreams.
I had a time when I didn't even look up at the sky. Those hard times live in my lyrics now. To anyone watching us, even from the north, I want to say, dream.
5 different dreams in one universe. Universe is showing that K-pop no longer solely belongs to South Korea, but to those with dreams and passion, regardless of where they're from. 박건우, Arirang News.
Rain is pouring down across the country today. By tomorrow, there will be as much as 300 millimeters or more of heavy rain in Jeollanam-do province and Gyeongsang-nam-do province, and more than 200 millimeters in the Chungcheong-do provinces and Gyeongsang-buk-do province, as well as up to 100 millimeters of rain in Seoul. There will be strong winds all over the country by tomorrow. In particular, there will be gusty winds of around 20 meters per second in the mountainous area. Currently, landslide warnings have been issued in the Chungcheong-do, Jeollado, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. Please take extra precautions. Morning temperatures will start off at around 23 to 26 degrees across the country. Daily highs move up to 29 degrees in Seoul, Busan, and Chuncheon, 32 degrees in Jeju. Rain in the Seoul metropolitan area and western parts of Gangwon-do province will continue until Sunday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
Your gateway to Korea, Simply K-pop.
Hello everyone, I'm your Simply MC Taewi of AB6. 반갑습니다.
And hello global fans, I'm your Simply Special MC, Alan of Gravity. Great to see you all.
Then this week's Simply K-pop,
Gateway to Korea.
Don't miss out.
Change the way you start skincare. 7 vegan peptide, maximum benefits for your skin. And amplify the effect of the next skincare step. Boosting, glowing, and brightening. Effortless care. Visible results. 7 vegan peptide booster. Mizone.
코딩을 배우고 싶어? 로보로보로 와! 로보로보와 코딩을 배워 로보로보와 사고력 키워 로보로보와 논리력 배워 코딩 처음이라면 코딩 교육 전문가와 함께 로보로보와 실력을 높여 로보로보와 목표를 이뤄 로보로보와 내 꿈을 펼쳐
미래를 준비하는 코딩 교육 전문가
On Press Perspective today, we touch upon a number of intriguing revelations of the past week related to Korea's post-independence movement against Japanese colonial rule, as well as the surge in marriages between South Korean men and Japanese women in recent times. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome. You're watching Press Perspective for this Friday, July 18th here in Seoul. I'm Min San-hee. Today, we touch upon a number of fun facts from history, in society and on style. For this, I have Thomas Maresca with American news agency UPI here in the studio. Thomas, welcome back.
Thanks. Great to be here as always.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with the pundit's take on the day's discussion. Colin, it's great to have you here.
Glad to be here, Sonny.
Right. Thomas, a while back, I remember, we talked about how your agency, UPI, was the first foreign news media to report about the Korean War. A historian now says that your news agency, UPI, was also among the first to report about Korea's March 1st movement. Let's start with that.
Right, so this is something that has just been coming out recently, and some new research by, it's called the Northeast Asian History Foundation, which is kind of a state-funded research organization here. And they've come across, newly digitized old newspapers from the U.S. And apparently there was some earlier reporting on the Korean independence movement than had traditionally been believed. For the longest time, the original report that has been widely cited was by a guy named Albert Wilder Taylor, who was based here, and he had written something that was published on March 13th. But according to, I think these old archives just hadn't been digitized, and they were doing a search. And there's actually some reporting that was from March 10th that was datelined in San Francisco, and it had apparently come from, there had been some contact by, it was a Korean preacher, I guess based in Shanghai, that had telegraphed some information to Koreans that were in San Francisco, and this got picked up, and UPI, I guess it was called UP back then, United Press, was one of the ones that ran with it. I don't know if there's, determined like which was the very first thing. So, just a little, like as you said, it's a sort of fun fact. It just changed, it's a bit of history that wasn't known. And I think that was just, a brief kind of outline of what was going on. Really the first on-the-ground reporting that was datelined, I think from here as well as Beijing, was this Albert Wilder Taylor report, and he had done that for AP, Associated Press, and famously ran in the New York Times, and he had gotten the information, as the story goes, had found the Korean Declaration of Independence, which had been hidden in his wife's hospital bed. She was giving birth around that time, and I guess some of the Korean independence activists figured, this would be a safe place to hide it. Like the Japanese, who were the colonial occupiers at the time, wouldn't go necessarily searching in a foreigner's hospital room. So that's the story of how he came across this information. He went on to report, from what was happening here, the protests, movements, the crackdown from the Japanese. And he also has some connection to UPI. I think it's not sure. There was some information that he was a correspondent for them, but then that seems to have been disputed. Now I think they're maybe asking, looking into that as well again. But he has a house here in Seoul that's become a museum as well that people can visit, called the Dilkusha House. So yeah, that's that.
Right. And Colin, I wonder, how significant have such foreign reports about turbulent events here in South Korea been in perhaps shaping the country's democracy, do you think?
I think they've gotten more significant all the time. Back in 1919, Korea was not, there was no newsboy in Manhattan saying, extra, extra, Korea rebels against Japan. I mean, there wasn't a big awareness of Korea in the West. There was a big awareness of Japan, and I think editorially as well, a desire maybe not to provoke Japan, which was a fast rising, industrializing, militarizing power. So having seen what happened with World War I, I feel like let's not provoke the rising power that is Japan. In any case, this is a matter internal to Asia, and some of the commentators who were aware of Korea at the time, travelers who went there from the West, would say, well, there was no modernization program in place in Korea, so Japan just happens to be the one who has to do it, I guess. There was a sense that it was forcible, but there was not really a sense that we have now of what was wrong with that process, what was wrong with Japan's actions on the whole. It was sort of out of sight, out of mind for a lot of Westerners. But I think the example example that comes more to mind is the reporting that was done during the Gwangju incident, uprising, massacre, what you want to call it what you will, in May 1980, and it was a German reporter, an incident dramatized in the film Taxi 운전사, or A Taxi Driver. But foreign reporting there's been more and more all the time here, and especially during the sort of transition to democracy in the 80s, it was always, how to put it, always a fairly sensitive matter amid the powers that be in Korea and the public as well. I mean, we can recall the story of the many stories surrounding the 1988 Olympics, and there was one incident where a boxer who lost a match didn't concede defeat, and the TV cameras recorded that and just displayed that to America, and there was anger here. You know, why? America, why did you show that to people? Why didn't you cover that up for us? So it gets complex, but I would say nowadays it's not. Nowadays it's sort of, the reporting that's done in Korea is important, but it's not, the ruling class is not quite so sensitive about it as they once were. Now that everybody accepts Korea as a democracy, as one of the advanced nation states of the world, not quite so much hangs in the balance for its reputation, but there's still a lot of concern about that nonetheless.
Right. Thomas, let's move on to another interesting piece of information, this time on the social front, also concerning South Korea and Japan. Now, findings as of last year show a substantial surge in the number of marriages between South Korean men and Japanese women over the past decade, actually. What more can you add first?
Right, so last year we saw it was an increase of 40% in marriages between Japanese women and Korean men. It was a total of 1,176, according to Statistics Korea, and that's a big jump. It was part of an overall trend, I think, where marriages in general have been on the rise in Korea, and foreign marriages were up 5% or so from the year prior. So some of it is catching a trend. I mean, still the largest groups of foreign women married to Korean men are from Vietnam, China, and I think Thailand, which are more groups that have migrated here and are based here. But yeah, the Japan-Korea thing is definitely an interesting trend. I mean, and it has been on the rise over the past few years, and I think, a decade or so in the past, it was also higher, went down. I think certainly COVID and some other things were factors in the years between. But it also, I think, rises and falls a bit with the relationship between Japan and South Korea, which has been, historically, obviously tumultuous, and but has had thaws and freezes, and we're currently in a period where, just on from a political standpoint, the relationship has gotten better, but even a few years ago, there was that, Japan boycott movement, and I think that did actually impact, the amount, just sort of the travel back and forth from the country, so that had an impact. But, at the same time, person to person, Korea, obviously, I think the main factors that have been kind of that are attributing to this rise, according to observers and the statistics agency itself, is popularity of K-culture has just obviously been on the rise globally, and that applies to Japan as well. A few articles I read pointed out there are these specific YouTube channels that have gotten really popular that feature couples where it's a Korean man and a Japanese woman, and have, some of them have millions of viewers. There was also a Japanese drama, like a comedy romance called I Love You, like E-Y-E-I. I don't know if you've heard about this, and I guess it was quite popular, where it's based on it's a Korean woman a Japanese woman who has the ability to read people's minds and feels like she can't find love because of that. The thoughts of other people are too intrusive, but she meets a Korean guy who thinks in Korean, so she can't really understand him, which is an interesting thing that's an attraction. But I think he also comes across as a very straightforward and innocent type of character, and she falls in love with him. So, these little factors may give a boost to the idea of it, but there feels like there's something there in the relationship that maybe an impression of Korean men that Japanese women have picked up over the years as being attractive or good partners. I mean, I've heard this kind of anecdotally here and there, even before this, this latest statistical thing, which, I don't know enough to explain like where it comes from or why, but certainly, it falls in line with, I think, the growing just appeal that Korea has globally.
Right. Staying with this, Colin, do you suppose the Korean wave has played a big part in the number of marriages between Korean men and Japanese women?
Specifically that, but probably hasn't hurt. But one of the findings in these statistics from 2024 that intrigued me was that 1 in 10 marriages are now international marriages in Korea. And of course, that includes marriages between 2 ethnic Koreans, one of whom has a foreign nationality, which is certainly not unknown here. But as Thomas says, when it's a Korean man marrying a foreign woman, which is the majority, it's about 3/4 of the cases, the wife is from Vietnam, about 30%, or after that, China, Thailand, usually Asia or Southeast Asia. If you look at the foreign husbands, about 30% come from the US, such as myself, which was intriguing. And then China and Vietnam were also popular countries there. So the composition demographically is maybe not necessarily what people would expect when they imagine what an international couple looks like. But if you look at the statistics, then you think, well, there is that sort of cultural image in Korea of the son of a rural family who struggles to get married, and so he marries a woman from Vietnam or Thailand or the Philippines. And so common was it seen to be that when I first came to Korea about 10 years ago, there were a lot of shows, reality shows, where they would send the foreign daughter-in-law with her mother-in-law, her Korean mother-in-law, to the daughter-in-law's home country and make them travel around for a week and work out their problems, because they would always, the stereotype is they don't get along that well, partially for language problems, partially because the foreigner doesn't understand the traditions or doesn't know what's expected of her. So this show was pretty entertaining, I think. And I don't know if that sort of thing still happens on TV, but yeah, as Thomas says, it's become very, to use a popular term, normalized. These YouTube channels like Sakura Memories or whatever, they'll focus on the specific culture clash. I think they live in Japan, but also there's YouTube channels where it's an American woman and a Korean man, or all the combinations are being tried on YouTube right now, I can assure you. And I think it's a far cry from stories I hear from an American friend who's been here since the mid-'80s. He said when he was going around in those days with his wife, with a woman who became his wife, we'd have to stand like 3 feet apart walking down the street. If we showed any sign we were together, there'd be trouble. And that certainly is not something you see on the streets of Seoul in any case. So that's changed.
Right, it has. Thomas, moving forward, one recent article claims that there is a very easy way of pinpointing a South Korean on vacation, most likely on the beach, because Koreans wear rash guards. What are your thoughts? And is this tendency, do you suppose, a reflection of our cultural practices, or?
It's definitely something I can, anecdotally attest to for sure, being at beaches here in Korea as well, or even swimming pools.
Is this what you see on the beaches here in Korea as well, then?
I've noticed it, yeah. I mean, looking further into it, there is data that the sales of these rash guards are going up. And just, rash guards are they're basically worn by surfers generally. They're sort of, tight but body suit, spandex type of tops. Sometimes they're full body suits. And clearly it's a trend among Korean beachgoers, and has been for a while. I think, I was trying to look back to when did this trend start, and I saw some reports from 2015 that were noting that this was becoming a popular thing. And, I think some of it reflects Asia in general. I mean, a lot of Asian cultures, if you go to a beach, even in Southeast Asia and Vietnam or something, you tend to see the women there cover up more so than you would see the US or like South America or maybe in Europe. And some of that is kind of a cultural modesty that still exists. Obviously, there's a different attitude towards the sun and wanting to be tan-skinned. I mean, that's a big reason. I mean, that's something you see certainly just walking the streets of Seoul. When waiting for the light to change, there are these big umbrellas, on the corners of a lot of streets that people will be clustering under to stay out of the sun, even for 5 seconds sometimes. So that's definitely part of it. But, the rash guard thing is kind of a Korea-specific version of that, and it's it's hard to say exactly why it is, but I mean, I think some of it is, certainly you do see in Korea when a trend takes off, a lot of people will kind of adopt it. There is a faddishness, I would say, to Korean culture in general. And, it seems to kind of vibe with the sort of the aesthetic attitude that a lot of people have. I mean, you see a lot of kind of like athletic wear, athleisure as a casual thing. So it seems to fit that. It's modest. People in some of these articles, you read talking about why they might wear it. I mean, it's especially something like a beach might be a mixed environment where there's families, so it's kind of seen as modest. Maybe if it's just, teens, 20-somethings going out themselves, it's not that people don't ever wear bikinis or one-piece bathing suits, but this is kind of something in a more mixed environment that might seem more proper to wear. But yet they're still form-fitting. It's not like it's a giant sort of baggy thing you're wearing over yourself. So, and I think there's a stylishness as it's gotten more popular. There's kind of a stylishness to it too. You see different prints, even different kinds of cuts of these things. So, it's taken on a life of its own in a very Korean way, and it's hard to say exactly that this is the specific reason why, but it feels like a Koreanizing, a Korean version of a kind of a bigger trend in Asia that just taps into this sense of style and this sense of kind of functionality and comfort, but still wanting to look kind of good at the same time.
Khalid, what's your take on this trend for rash guards here in the country?
Glad to learn the name of these things. I've seen them and I never knew what to call them. They're sort of wetsuit-looking shirts, but you do see them everywhere. And even if you go abroad and you're at a beach and you see some travelers from Asia wearing them, they're probably Korean, much as if you see couples dressed the same, they're probably Korean. As Thomas says, it's a trend-sensitive society. And when some trend happens, it's safe to get with it. There's, as you say, the Korean mentality, I think, is reflected in this word that comes up in coverage of this trend and certain others, 문난템. 문난템 is 무난한 item. Item is item, like the English word. 무난하다 is an adjective meaning it's safe, or there's nothing obviously wrong with it. So if you have something 무난해, then you're safe. No one's going to criticize you for it. And so if everybody's wearing these rash guards and you have one too, you're safe. And they're not very revealing, so that's safe as well. Although when listening to Thomas, I recall when I first came to Korea, I noticed very different styles of dress from the US, of course, and women would never show their shoulders. That's changing, but in those days, you would never see that. And you'd hear like, oh, they still dress modestly here. But then you look down at what they were wearing below, like on the bottom half, and it didn't seem very modest to me. So the rules were different. Like you can show as much leg as possible, like sky's the limit, but if you show the shoulder, 안 돼요. Kind of the reverse of the US at that time. So these trends can change too. I don't know what's going to be the 문난템 2 years from now, even 1 year from now. No one knows. So that's why, cash in on these trends while you can.
One question though, Colin, you were saying these couple clothing or these couples wearing the same clothes, it's not a thing in the US then? Is it just a Korean thing?
I think a lot of American couples of whatever ethnicity, if they step out in the morning and they find they're wearing a similar shirt, or they look a little too matchy-matchy, as they say, they change. Like you don't want to be seen to be doing that. So I think this is really Korea only. I don't even see it in Japan very much. So
even if you're on your honeymoon?
I don't know any American who's done that. I'm sure there probably is somebody. It's been done. I mean, America's a big place, and there are people who you can find individuals who enjoy that. It just has a sort of bad. It's not 문난해. I'll put it that way.
Right.
There's no 문난템 in there.
Right. Thomas, back on the local front, the Blue House, it's supposed to close its doors to the public, I believe, come August 1st. Could you tell us a bit about this?
Right. So it was open to the public only briefly. This is the presidential residence and office, or has been since 1948 until 2022, when former President Yoon Suk-yeol decided to move out, and he ended up moving to what was the former Defense Ministry for the office, and moved to Hanam-dong for his residence. And now current President Lee Jae-myung is moving back. So it had been turned into a museum and just kind of an open ground, kind of a public urban park in this interim period. And, for so many Koreans, it was a chance to visit this place that most had not really had an opportunity to see. It's interesting in that it encapsulates so much of the complicated history of the country, of the presidential office, all in this one building. The reason that Yoon gave for moving, and this is, other presidents have also talked about wanting to relocate. I mean, the president before him, Moon Jae-in, also had discussed it. But, Yoon said that he wanted to bring the president's office closer to the people. And there is something about the Blue House that is, it's very grand. It does seem very fitting as a the head of state sort of residence and office. But it also does have this feeling of being removed from the public, and the security around it was always quite high. And it's not the sort of place you could just sort of stroll up to. And and it also symbolizes this idea that Korea's presidency, the office itself, has often been called an imperial presidency, where there's been so much power, invested in the office, and often to not great effect. That's another reason that people certainly, speculated about why Yoon wanted to move, and other presidents maybe in the past, is this idea that it's got bad energy. Literally, people have said it's got bad feng shui, this kind of geomancy, element. But at the same time, I think it also traditionally was thought of as a place that had really good feng shui, which is why it's behind the Gyeongbokgung Palace, and those locations were chosen for a reason. But a lot of bad things have happened to people who have been president in Korea. I think something 9 out of 14 have either been impeached, removed, exiled. Some have come to violent ends. So, it's an office fraught with a lot of sort of history that's not so great. So I think that was an element of it as well. But at the same time, the public, I think, wanted to see, it was a mixed opinion about moving away. And now that Lee Jae-myung is moving back, there was a poll recently that about 60% wanted him to move back. So, it really sort of symbolizes a lot about the complication of the presidency, and, it's just the complicated history. It goes back to the Japanese were there, and, this location goes back to the Joseon dynasty. So it's one building that has a lot going on with it, and, on both sides of sort of good and bad.
Right. Well, for our viewers here in South Korea who have yet to visit the Blue House, it's going to stay open for the next 2 weeks then, right, Thomas?
Yes.
All right. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thomas, as always, thank you very much for your insights. And Colin, thank you very much for your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Right. That brings us to the end of this week's editions of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and see you same time next Monday.
Arirang TV is conducting an overseas TV viewer survey to provide you with a better global broadcast service. Share your valuable feedback on the Arirang TV